Hello and welcome to John Broons, the Family Business Guy. That's me. And this is my show, The Family Business Show. And today I have a very special guest, Mr. Mark Kagan from Scarpa Imports Proprietary Limited, based in Melbourne. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Pleasure to be here.
You know, I've known you for quite a long time, and I know you've been involved with family business most of your life. Would you like to tell us how you started off in family business and a little bit of your journey to get to where you are today?
Well, it goes back a while, but yeah, okay. Started off as a practicing solicitor and really had to find an office that I could afford. So I ended up in my father and uncle's warehouse or property in Laverton North, and started working for them, doing a bit of legal work and working for them. So
hang on. You went from a solicitor to working in an office, and you were sharing the office, so you were a solicitor working out of their offices.
Correct. Part-time, and then part-time physically working for the Kagan brothers warehousing and transport company.
Okay, so this was your dad's and your uncle's business.
And their uncle.
Okay, so it was truly intergenerational at that stage.
Yeah. So when it passed from my great uncle to my uncle and my dad, so the brothers, it's not like your normal passage from father to son. It's a much quicker, abbreviated version. So then my uncle's son Gary got involved, and I got involved as an ownership as well. But I've got to tell you, the transition between my father and uncle and me and Gary was one for the record book that you should never follow in the future.
Okay, so the business was transport and storage?
Yep, warehousing, yep.
Okay, and how long had the business been trading before you came into the company?
Started in about 1950. I got involved about 1974 and was there for about 24 years.
Okay. So when you say what you did with your cousin and your father and your uncle, that transition to you guys is one not to do. Okay, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
But where are you today? Because you're still in a family business.
Gary and I had an opportunity to roll up 4 other national warehousing companies in Australia together with ours. So 5 of us. We then on-sold to private equity. The deal was good. We were very happy with it. So we sold that, I think, a week and a half before the GFC in 2007, and raced to the banks and banked the check. And then, but during that time, in fact, for the last 28 years, I've been involved with my wife's business, with Sarah's business. She's an importer of greeting cards, wrapping paper, stationery, booklets, party wear, all sorts of stuff, and distributes throughout Australia to all the retail shops. So I've always been in the background there as a director and keeping an eye on the finances and things like that. Okay. That's where I'm working, and she keeps an eye on me.
And she keeps an eye on you. So you work together, and you have a number of employees, and you run the business together. Is there a possibility that the business may in the future transition to one or more of your children? If you have more children, how many kids do you have?
We've got 3 boys. One's a lawyer at Mallison's, one's in the sales side of things and running his own peanut butter business, and the third one is doing architectural design at RMIT. That's an interesting question. The discussion's been had at home quite a bit, and all 3 of them say it would be very sad not to pass it on to one of the kids. Sarah's plan is to work there until she's 95. She loves it. And so there's no real plan to sell. And there's never really been a lot of planning in the organisation at all.
Okay.
So at this stage, it's just going on.
So it's a well-established, well-run business. And even through these COVID times, how are you travelling with times a little bit challenging? 34
years it's been going. I would suggest if it wasn't for the government's initiative, we wouldn't be trading. The job keeper That's kept us alive, and we've been able to keep employing 4 full-time, 2 part-time staff. And although many of our retail shops had closed, some of the others, like pharmacies and food stores that we were supplying, and even David Jones, were ticking over. So we were great. We were keeping up, but definitely sales disastrous. So then Sarah set up a new online store called Me and Mimi, and that's kept us all busy as well. So we're trying to trade through that as well as a retail outlet rather than a wholesale outlet to the retailers.
Innovation. Amazing.
Pivoting. You got it. Yeah. You got to change with the times.
Yeah, great. Okay. So thanks for that. I've got a bit of a picture of where we are, where you are today, working with your wife. Tell us a little bit about some of the challenges. You mentioned about this process of transition, but was that the biggest challenge, or were there other challenges along the way until you reached that point of transition? And was there a point of transition?
Let me tell you the good things first.
Yep.
The best thing that ever happened to our organisation, with 2 first cousins running it, was to put in an independent, non-family member as a CEO.
Okay.
And also a finance guy who took over from Gary. Gary's a fully qualified accountant, but our roles were sales, and we couldn't spend our time doing finance as well. So this guy was excellent. And between the two of them, they developed the business in those, I think, 8 years, more than Gary and I did in the 20 years before that. So that was a really good move, and it freed us to go into sales, and it freed us from having arguments and discussions and not knowing which way to go. We started a board, got in another accountant, which we weren't planning to, and formalised the board, and really we developed a constitution, and we really went forward after that. That was great. The problem was the way our fathers used to do business was on a handshake. They didn't understand contracts and documents and stuff. It was handshake stuff with the bank, with everybody. So when Dad went overseas one year to sell, and they were in wool waste, literally wool waste, to sell, he came back, and his brother had literally given his share of the business, his 50%, to his son, to Gary. And no discussion. Dad came back and he had a new partner. It was very not right. And of course, so then I had to work on my father, and then we had to formalize it because we had to buy it. We couldn't just take it because we did have brothers. But the issue was neither of us discussed it with the family. It was never discussed with the family. And, one of the brothers in the end got very, very upset and lost contact with us completely, thinking he was hard done by. But we had the business valued. We then paid out that amount, but over a period of time. So it was an easier way to buy a business. But the bottom line is there was nothing unethical about it. It's just that there was no open communication. And that's a disaster.
Did that relationship ever rebuild?
Yes. Everybody's fine now.
Okay. And was that
took
through a financial arrangement? Or was it more conversational, making a point of meetings and talking it through?
There was a lot of emotion. There was a divorce as well on that side. It was financial in the end, but it was over time just got okay again. It was never structured properly. It was never really done with formal solicitors and accountants. And I mean, the accountant got involved, but only up to a point. And, with all my family business background now and going through Family Business Australia and that sort of stuff, I can see all the issues that came up that were absolutely stupid. And open communication's got to be the biggest one.
Well, apparently between your dad and your uncle, there would have been a lot of communication on how to run the business and what to do in the business. But transition of shares was never a discussion point. And one believed he could do whatever he could, what he wanted with what was his.
Absolutely.
and there was
Absolutely. No
no
one,
perspective on what happened or what the repercussions were within the family.
no understanding whatsoever of structure, corporate regulations or anything. Nothing. Just dad came back from a trip and he had a new partner.
So planning wasn't a word that they had really considered ever before. Business
No,
was there strategic plans done in the business? Because it sounds like it was a considerable size business.
yeah, it was substantial, and you know, we were exporting a lot of containers overseas, and they were traveling overseas. A lot of was so when they actually got paid for their container loads, yes, it was substantial, and we had a good warehouse in Laverton North, which Gary and I sort of developed. They had a site of 12 acres and 5 warehouses of 3,500 square meters, and we ended up filling them with warehousing and transport. So I never really worked in the wool waste business. I just worked in the other side of it. So, but yeah, it was a decent business, and we expanded it to warehousing throughout Australia in every capital city and staff. So we built it up pretty well. Yeah, it was a decent company when we sold it.
Okay. So your experience as a solicitor was fantastic, and your
Yep,
cousin, and a great impact on the business, and your cousin also having accounting experience and focusing on sales, 2 very complementary skills required inside the business.
yes, but you've got to know when you've reached your limit and you need someone outside, not necessarily just a board member, but you need someone outside to help you run the business that knows more about certain aspects than we do. Because we had some crazy times. I mean, we tried buying a company in Brisbane and we were dealing with the wrong person. We didn't even, we've had some stupid things happen, but no, we survived, we managed, and look, we built it up to a $50 million business. So with plenty of staff and a lot of issues with unions and stuff, but generally it worked very, very well. We had a great warehouse management system, and Gary and I had a really good partnership and honest relationship, which worked really well, which is good.
So aside from the family transition issue, which was the biggest of the issues that you're talking about,
Yep.
Challenges in business or other challenges that you might have recognized working through all of that?
Well, we're going back to 2007 when we sold it. So once we developed this very good warehouse management system, we found that we could handle the contracts that Linfox and Tolls and everyone weren't quite interested in, the $5 million a year contracts. So we were very good in that area of the market, and we were pulling them in, which was great. The problem is with warehousing, once you fill a warehouse, you go out and rent another one or buy another one or whatever. And then for the next 6 months, you bleed because you've got to try and fill it. So it's an ongoing drain. So you've got to learn to try and pull some money out personally, to pull it out and invest it and keep it to the side. It took us years before we could do all that. We're constantly reinvesting into the business, and with no real plan of retirement. So, you know, you've got to think about that from day one. Make sure you allocate something and try and build up your own family or private investments on the side, because otherwise you just throw it back into the business all the time.
You just raised an interesting question. No planning. Okay. So yourself and your cousin, Gary, you've bought the business, you've been trading for 5, 10, 15 years. And had you ever started conversations about strategic exiting?
No. At that stage, we were both pretty comfortable, but it's when we had our financial controller and our CEO get involved. That's when we could talk about formalizing things. That's when we had the chance to talk about it. Rob was really good at that side of it. We got a formal board, and that's when we started planning things, our expansion within interstate, how we finance it, how we go through it, where we want to be in the next 5, 10 years.
So that's great from a business point of view, but what sort of planning did you do for yourself and for Gary, for himself? Sort of like thinking about, okay, in 10, 20, 30 years, we're going to retire out.
Well, I don't think there was not a lot of formal planning on that. What we tried to do is just allocate some dividends when we were profitable, and just try and build up our own personal finances. There was no sort of family office or anything like that. We never really got to that stage. which I think would have been fabulous for us. But we never really got to that stage. And there was no real talk about getting out either, because we were both enjoying it. And we both got to the stage where we weren't needed in the office 100% of the time. So that, to me, was excellent. You know, if they really needed us, they'd call us, and, you know, we'd come into all the presentations and show that, you know, the family was very, very, very involved in the business.
Okay.
And
So from what you've learned and of running a large business, and then having a board and structure and selling that business, how did you end up? Was it just a simple, okay, now that I've done my full day's work working out in Laverton North, was it, okay, tomorrow I'm going to go in and sit in the office and do stuff with my wife? How did that transition occur?
No, that never really happened that way till I left Kagan's. Mostly what I was doing was just being involved with the accountant, getting involved with all the paperwork and the documentation relating to finance. So I wasn't really involved on a day-to-day. I was never involved at that stage on a day-to-day side of it. She's got a manager there. She's got staff that are doing it all. If she had any problems, I'd come and get involved, and I'd read the contracts and things like that. But no, she was running it. Had a great guy still there. Scott's doing a really good job. So it's great from that point of view.
So are you there sort of like a 7-day, a 5-day week, or Monday to Friday, or?
I was coming in every day pre-COVID, probably for at least half a day every day, and helping out or discussing things or taking on things. But now with COVID, and I've been home now for probably, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. I've been just looking at finances here and speaking to them every couple of days if they need a hand. And I think I like the situation, not having to go in there every day. I love it here at home. Very comfortable. I'm enjoying it.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to enjoy where you are, especially in these trying times.
Shocking.
So,
it's very strange, yeah.
You've started discussions with your sons, and so obviously there is a planning. They obviously, in these conversations, do you talk about their goals and what they want to achieve in their lives? Or are they still a bit too young in your mind? I mean, how deep do you have these conversations?
Well, without giving away too much on what they're all thinking, we've talked, Tom and I, the lawyer, we've talked a lot. He seems to know where he's heading, in that he's enjoying his legal work. And it was tough the first couple of years, very, very tough. He seems to have settled in a little bit more now. Jeremy, the designer, it's a bit new still. He's still studying. And Sam wants to build up his nut butter business. He's doing very well now. He's reaching targets and breaching targets, which is fantastic. But he's also working 4 days a week in a sales role, which I don't think he's got any plans to leave either. So he's busy both ways.
Okay.
None of them have a girlfriend, though, if you know anyone.
Okay. And you and Sarah, your wife, you're discussing these sorts of things. How often do you plan them? Do you have it once a month or once a quarter, or it's just as things are running, you're happy doing this?
Sarah's accountant for years has said that Scarpa just runs by remote control, and she pops in when it suits her, and every day, but she's there, and she's always on the phone to them and always looking for new stock overseas. Her main role is to source product. So it's not always easy to catch her. It's not always easy to have a formal discussion. And Scott and I will do some planning, but it's not what I'd call formal business planning and succession planning and anything like that. No, there's not a lot of it that takes place. Even with all my background and all my FBA, my Family Business Australia stuff, and my learning from that, I've had trouble trying to work out how to plan for the business, because her plan is to just be there till she's 95, and I'm not planning to do that.
Okay. You mentioned Family Business Australia. What is Family Business Australia, and where do you fit in the picture?
I've been involved with FBA probably close to day one, 98 when it started. I've been in a forum group I think, for 18 years now. I've loved it. And any issues I've had with Gary or in the office, I've been able to bring to my forum group and talk completely openly about it.
So this is a very tight-knit little group, and it's a place where you have total confidentiality, and it's run by
A facilitator.
A facilitator that's hired by
FBA.
Family Business Australia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you might have 10 to 12 people in it, and it's Chatham House rules. You know, you say something there, it just can't be leaked. It's just, and it's great. And Family Business Australia does a lot of these forum groups, and I think they're wonderful. Different age groups, next geners, it's wonderful. But I was very involved with that. Then I remember when Angela got sick, she was supposed to be national chairman. She came up to me just over 3 years ago. She said, I finally found a new chairman. I said, great, that's excellent. Who's that? She said, it's you. So I'm now national chairman of Family Business Australia, and I'm loving it, absolutely loving it. I'm hoping to get re-elected for the next 3 years, subject to the board's approval. So that's hopefully will happen in the next couple of months.
Okay. So Family Business Australia, an educational type organisation, teaches people how to manage their families in business structures and how to do things.
It's a not-for-profit. Education's only one of the planks that it's working on. But yeah, we're trying to leverage the family business advantage and try and help every family business. So we've got advisors like yourself, John, who are very, very involved with family business, and it's it's an interesting combination of advisors and members as family business members. So it's I love it. Great conferences each year, and good people, really good people.
Yeah, good people. So here we are. We've talked about how the business started, how the business transitioned, how you've exited to some degree, and now you're working with your wife. What are some tips? Because you've mentioned some of the good stuff and some of the bad stuff. Give us 2 or 3 tips to anybody who's thinking about maybe transitioning or bringing somebody into the business of a next generation. What are a couple of things that you might really critically think would be great?
First of all, you've got to formalise. If you can afford to formalise, maybe get a board together, but at least bring your accountant and maybe lawyer involved and understand the legalities and what you're doing. Because if you don't, and then of course bring everybody in for open discussion, the whole family, whether they become involved or not, they have to be involved in the discussions. I've seen issues with us where one of the owners not interested in discussion, not interested in communication, you know, bang, here's my share to Gary, sort of thing. I've seen the lack of communication with family, which leads to complete problems with a brother, and it's, you know, it's terribly disappointing. It's just wrong. And if open communication possibly could have fixed that right from the start. So that's the biggest one. Get the entire family involved, whether they're going to be involved down the long term or not, and make them understand what the direction is, where you're all heading and how, and make it fair. It's got to be fair.
That's a big one. Be fair.
Yeah.
I notice you use the word fair and not equal. Isn't that amazing? Fair to me is the right way to go about it, because children or siblings are not the same gender, necessarily the same age, have the same life experience. So fair is a better measure. If everybody can come to an agreement, then we've got a balance.
One of the biggest issues, and I hear it at Family Business Australia all the time, especially at the last conference, and it was similar to us, is, you know, I'm working in the business and I've been in the business and I've grown the business. My brother and sister, they don't have anything to do with the business. They're getting dividends, they're getting this, and all I'm doing is building up their future. You know, I want to take it over. How do we go about it? And it's a very difficult situation, but you're not on your own. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are ways to do it. And even with a stubborn prehistoric founder, which is often the case, who won't discuss it with you, it can be done, but you've got to do it carefully, and you've got to have all the family involved. Otherwise, it just blows up the family. I've seen it too many times.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
difficult.
Mark, it's incredibly difficult, and
Yeah,
as much as you see it, I also see it.
yeah, for sure.
So what I want to do now is say thank you very much, Mark. Really, this has been a wonderful conversation. I've learned a little bit about you and the family history, and your time today has been very much appreciated. So for those of you out there listening, please subscribe to the channel. If you've got a question, please send it to me, john@johnbroons.com. And if you have any questions about this presentation with Mark, please send me an email, communicate with me, and I'll be sure to ask Mark and come back to you. So thanks very much for today.
Can I say one other thing?
Yes, please.
I have to give us a bit of a prompt for Family Business Australia, because they've really helped me in learning and growing through forum groups and through the education side of things. So, if you've got issues, approach us and maybe we can help you. Thanks, John. Thank you very much.
That's great advice. Thank you very much, Mark, and thanks everybody for listening.